Hello, and welcome to another look with Christian King. I just finished up the UFC 234 recap show, and I decided to just pour myself a little more coffee and jump right back into it to go ahead and knock out this UFC on ESPN 1 preview show. So this is going to be the first UFC event on actual regular ESPN. The whole card, as far as I know, will be on ESPN. I have all this pulled up. I can check it right now. ESPN Plus for the early prelims at 5:30. Man, this is going to be a ton of fun. The main card starts at 9. This is going to be the best Sunday ever. This is next Sunday, the 17th. I can't wait. So we're going to go right into it. I already have marked down the fights that I'm in my notes that I'm going to make picks on. Some of them I kind of already know which way I'm leaning. Some of them we're going to figure out as we go. I'm excited for this one. We're going to jump right in. If you hear any noises, I'm just rearranging a couple things on the desk in front of me and scooting a little bit closer to the microphone. Probably should have done this before I went live, but it's okay. All right. So to jump right into it, and I'm not going to pick every fight, but I definitely have a lot more that I'm excited for on this one than the one we just finished recapping. So the early prelims kick off on ESPN Plus at 5:30 p.m. Eastern Time. We're going to skip over the first one. Then we have Renan Barão taking on Luke Sanders. Renan Barão still has a shockingly good record of 34-4, but is pretty much washed at this point. Luke Sanders is not exactly Mr. Reliable, though. Hopefully we'll get a good action fight out of that one. Not too sure what else to think, though, other than an action fight. And then in the headliner of the early prelims on ESPN Plus, we've got Jodie Esquibel taking on Jessica Penne, who I guess is still fighting. Wow, she hasn't fought in forever. She has a lot of problems in the striking department. She gets teed off on by girls that are any kind of good strikers. She got brutally stopped back-to-back off Joanna Jędrzejczyk and Jessica Andrade. She's a good grappler, I think. She often doesn't get to use it. I don't know. She seems to just really struggle with taking punches. She seems to have a really tough time when people get in her face. I hope she does well in this fight. I think this is a much more favorable matchup for her than someone like Jessica Andrade is. Jesus Christ. But I'm not too sure what to think, and just to be blunt, not terribly excited about that fight. Then we get to regular ESPN at 7 p.m. Eastern Time. We open up with Scott Holtzman taking on Nick Lentz. Nick Lentz is coming off of he TKO'd Gray Maynard. And then he had that decision loss to David Tamor, who blatantly grabbed the fence, which could have greatly impacted that fight. Hot Sauce Scott Holtzman just knocked out Alan Patrick, and before that he won unanimous decisions over Daryl Horcher and Michael McBride. So yeah, he's got some promise showing. I would definitely favor Scott Holtzman. He's the one on his way up. Nick Lentz is kind of on the backside of his career, in my opinion. After that, we have Ashley Evans Smith. Oh, sorry, and that's I guess that'd be a featherweight fight or a lightweight fight. Be a lightweight fight. So yeah, that's a lightweight fight. And Jodie Esquibel versus Jessica Penne is a strawweight fight. So yeah, let's just out of curiosity, while we're going through these, let's see who's favored in this, Scott? Yeah, Scott Holtzman's a pretty big favorite over Nick Lentz, or a decent favorite. Okay. Then we have Ashley Evans Smith taking on Andrea Lee at women's strawweight. Andrea Lee recently had a fight canceled due to her opponent getting sick trying to make weight, so she's making a quick turnaround after not getting to fight that night. You got to favor her here to beat Ashley Evans Smith, but to be honest, I'm not too into this fight, not super concerned with it. We've got Manny Bermudez taking on Benito Lopez, and that is going to be a men's bantamweight fight. And yeah, I'm not too sure who to favor in that one, but we'll see how that one plays out. That should be fun. Sorry, I'm trying to pull up an alternate view of this card. Here we go. Perfect. This is much better. Okay. So, and then my first pick of the night is going to be in the ESPN prelims headliner. Jimmy Rivera is taking on Aljamain Sterling. Aljamain Sterling is coming off an impressive win over Cody Stamann. Jimmy Rivera is coming off of a kind of, I guess, you could say, you could maybe say potentially boring win if I'm thinking about it correctly and I'm remembering. I think that he beat John Dodson in his last fight, and that one was definitely a little bit of a snoozer of a decision, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, he just came off that win over John Dodson. Aljamain Sterling is coming off of that win over Cody Stamann, if I'm not mistaken. I'm just going to check that. Yep, that's correct. Okay, so basically here's the deal. Aljamain Sterling doesn't do very well being pressured. I don't think he's going to be able to grapple with just someone like Jimmy Rivera, who's just such a little compact tank with excellent wrestling defense. I think that this fight is going to be somewhat entertaining, but not the best fight we've ever seen. And I'm going to take Jimmy Rivera to win a unanimous decision. And just to be honest, I'm not a big fan of Aljamain Sterling. He just kind of gets on my nerves. So, yeah. Although Jimmy Rivera kind of does too. But I think Jimmy Rivera will get the win here by unanimous decision, and that'll shut down any talks about Aljamain Sterling being in title contention, because I'm sorry, Aljamain Sterling does not have a game deep enough for title contention at bantamweight at this time. Just a lot of weird kicks and a lot of grappling that requires your participation. Aljamain Sterling is the underdog. Plus 162 is the best odds you can get him at. Jimmy Rivera, minus 172 would be the best favorite odds to place the bet at. All right, that takes us to the main card. And the main card opener is Andre Fili versus Miles Jury at featherweight. Let's see where these guys are coming off of. Miles Jury got knocked out bad by Chad Mendes in his last fight. Andre Fili seems to be improving a lot as he goes. He lost a split decision to Michael Johnson on his last fight. Before that, he won a split decision over Dennis Bermudez. I guess you got to favor Andre Fili. Just got a little more momentum and stuff, but I'm not making an official pick in that fight. I just don't really care, to be honest, that much about that fight. Andre Fili is the underdog, actually, so that's interesting. I consider a small bet on Andre Fili. Okay, and that's at men's featherweight, as I said. All right, now we're getting into some good stuff. Sorry, a little cold brew. Brian Bam Bam Barberina taking on Vicente Luque, or Vicente Luque, or Vicente Luque, however you want to say it. There's 100 different. I like going Vicente Luque because you're going full fancy with it. And then we got Brian Bam Bam Barberina. This is a men's welterweight fight. Man, Brian Barberina coming off a brutal stoppage of Jake Ellenberger, but I mean, the writing was on the wall for that one. And Vicente Luque coming off a pretty brutal stoppage himself of Jalen Turner and Chad LaPriest. Now, Jalen Turner is a lightweight who we saw compete last night, but still pretty impressive to knock out someone that viciously when they're not cutting any weight. So you can look at it that way, or you could look at it that Jalen Turner's a little undersized, but he looked bigger than Vicente Luque. I mean, he's a huge lightweight, so Vicente Luque's got a lot of momentum going here. Brian Barberina just beat someone who's completely washed, whereas Vicente Luque has just beaten a few people in a row that are, up and coming. So I think you kind of got to favor Luque here. I'd be willing to bet he's a big favorite. My concern is we see him have a lot of success when he get the knockout, but can he knock out Brian Barberina? I don't know. That seems pretty, that seems like that'd be pretty hard. I mean, he's a hard guy to stop. I don't think he's ever been stopped. We can look. We can see what all he's got. He's never been stopped. This dude's tough as nails. So can Vicente Luque keep the game together the whole time to win a decision? If he can't get the stoppage, do we have to worry about him getting out-grappled by Barberina? I mean, you think about the Warley Alves Barberina fight where Barberina just kept pushing and was all over him and just didn't let him breathe. That's one way that this fight could go, and that would be interesting, which makes me think that Barberina might have a little bit of a shot here. I'm really, 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 really tempted to take Barberina as the underdog, as I'm sure he's the underdog, and pick him to get this win. But I'm also completely in the opposite direction tempted to pick Vicente Luque to be the first person to stop him, because I don't know if Brian Barberina's ever gotten hit by someone who hits as hard as Vicente Luque. Let's see what the biggest puncher sees. So Jake Ellenberger doesn't count anymore. Leon Edwards is not a big puncher. Joe Proctor is not a big puncher. Colby Covington's not a big puncher. Walter Alves isn't a big puncher. You know, I'm going to say that this is the first time he's fighting someone that can hit like this. I'm actually going to take Vicente Luque to be the first person to knock out Brian Barberina. So I'm taking Luque by KO. Man, that's a stretch, but that's what I'm taking. Luque by KO. I just don't know what round. He seems to pick up on guys pretty quick. He seems to push it pretty quickly. I'm going to go ahead and just say he gets him out of there in round one. He gets to him before he has time to really settle in and hurts him and stops him. The odds on that fight, Vicente Luque is a huge favorite. Minus 346 would be 345. Sorry, would be the best odds to bet him at. And Brian Barberina, you could grab him as high as plus 304. And remember, just a second ago, I was saying there's a chance Brian Barberina could give him trouble if Luque can't stop him. So I mean, if we're talking $5 bets here, you know, bet $5 on Brian Barberina wouldn't be the worst way to spend $5. The worst way to spend $5 is I don't know. What would be the worst way to spend $5? Probably Arby's. I think Arby's would be the worst way to spend $5. Yeah. That's the worst way to spend any money, though. Jesus. I don't even think I've ever eaten Arby's. God, the place gives me the creeps. Okay. Alex Caceres is taking on Crone Gracie in the next fight. And Crone Gracie is making his professional debut. So Alex Caceres, we're just going to cut to the chase here. Alex Caceres is a journeyman. He's 14-11, so he's barely won more than he's lost. I don't know where this fight's taking place at, because Alex Caceres has fought everywhere from like welterweight to flyweight, and Crone Gracie's listed as a middleweight, so Lord knows where this fight's taking place. We can check it out if we look at the UFC's official stuff. It's at featherweight. Okay, so Crone Gracie, and he's also listed as 4-0 on the UFC's thing, but he's listed as 0-0 on MMA Junkie, so I've got no idea what's going on here. But Caceres is a journeyman. He's here as an opponent. Apparently, he's really started to put it together lately, but I don't think that'll be enough when you're talking about going against Crone Gracie. Crone Gracie is, of course, part of the legendary Gracie family, and he just submits people left, right, and center, but this will be the first time he's fought on a big stage. Apparently, he's got pretty good boxing, too. The issue with this is that making a pick would be completely uneducated, because I've never seen Crone Gracie compete. He's only competed in Japan. And Caceres, we really don't know. I mean, this isn't a grappling match, so he has to take Caceres down. So I don't know if he's going to look great or if he's going to look awful. I also don't know, is this the first time he's ever cut to featherweight? Because he's listed as a middleweight. If he's changing like 3 or 4 weight classes at once, that's not going to be good, but I'm guessing that information is not correct, so I don't know enough to make a pick here, so I'm not going to make a pick here. We're going to look at the odds, and we're going to enjoy the fight. Obviously, Crone Gracie's going to be looking for a submission. Obviously, Caceres is going to be looking to not get put on the ground for even half a second. The odds on this fight, Crone Gracie's a big favorite. Minus 341 would be minus 338 be the best odds to get him at, and Caceres is as high as plus 299 on sportbet.com. Yeah, so like I said, not enough there to make a pick. All right, we're about to move into a fun fight that I am looking forward to. It's a women's strawweight fight between Courtney Casey and Cynthia Calvillo. Casey is coming off of, I think, a win over my girl, Angela Hill, by split decision. Yep. And before that, she lost a split decision to Michelle Waterson and Felice Herrig. And there's a theme here about split decisions, and it might come into play in my pick in a second. And then we have Cynthia Calvillo, who thought she beat Carla Esparza. No idea how she thought that. And she recently submitted Poliana Botelho, who I just don't really know how good Poliana Botelho is. So Courtney Casey is a big, strong strawweight. She used to be a very high-level college soccer player. She has powerful kicks. She has strong legs. She has good striking. Her defense is a little porous, but Cynthia Calvillo's striking is not good in my opinion. And I also think Cynthia Calvillo has a problem where she seems to think she's winning a lot of fights that she's not. Courtney Casey has been getting harder to take down, but only slightly. Courtney Casey's a very frustrating fighter. I'll cut to the chase. I'm taking Courtney Casey by split decision. Not sure if I really trust that pick because she can be incredibly inconsistent. And by the way, my pen clicking was just picking up into the microphone. I apologize. Old habits die hard. So Cynthia Calvillo is definitely more reliable than Courtney Casey. Cynthia Calvillo's biggest problem is that she thinks she's better at striking than she is, and she always thinks that she's winning fights when maybe it's a little bit more up in the air, depending on how you're watching it. So that's her biggest problems. Courtney Casey's biggest problems are that she's just really inconsistent. It seems like sometimes she can stuff a takedown, and other times she can't stuff a takedown to save her life. And I don't know if it just maybe personal life things. Sometimes she's having good training camps. Sometimes she's having a tough time. Fighters are very emotional people. A lot of them suffer from anxieties and depressions and stuff. It could be a mental thing. It could be a physical thing. It could be that I'm being unreasonable. Maybe she is more reliable than I'm giving her credit for, and it just happens that the times I'm really paying attention, she makes bad decisions. But I'm going to trust her. I think you've got to get better as you go along. She's not old yet. Cynthia Calvillo is a lot older than people think. People act like Cynthia Calvillo is in her early 20s. She's 31. Okay, like it's not that young for a women's strawweight. Courtney Casey is also 31, so this isn't like a young, hungry fighter versus an old fighter. These women are both 31 years old. They're both they're both as far along as they're going to get physically. And I think Courtney Casey does have some physical advantages here, and I think they're going to play out enough for her to get that split decision. She is the split decision queen. She gets involved in so many fights that end up being splits, but I think she can take this one. She's a big underdog too. Plus 225 would be the best odds to bet her at. Or sorry, no. Plus 244, you want to go higher for the underdog, and then minus 264 would be the best odds to get Cynthia Calvillo at as the favorite. I would not touch those odds for Cynthia Calvillo. She is not reliable or proven enough to be that big a favorite in this fight. After that, we have our co-main event, which is a men's lightweight fight between Paul Felder and one of my least favorite fighters, James Vick. I'm taking Paul Felder, and I'm taking Paul Felder. I want to say that Paul Felder will knock him the hell out. James Vick just gets on my nerves, man. I think part of what gets on my nerves is his insistence at being an anorexic 6'4", 155-pound fighter. He looks terrible, and I also just don't. He does a lot of things that bother me. One thing that really bothers me is the fact that he's addicted to sugar. I find that so immature. This dude has a kid. He is 31 years old, and he's trying to be a professional athlete. But according to his nutritionist, it's always a game of, okay, James, if you do this, you can have some Twizzlers. Okay, James, if you do this, you can have some sour gummy worms. Like, what are you, 5 years old? You're a professional athlete. I mean, geez, I hope that those Twizzlers tasted good when you got knocked out by Justin Gaethje in the first 30 seconds of that fight. I mean, man, if you're trying to train professionally and you're cutting ungodly amounts of weight, don't eat junk food. I mean, God, sorry, that just bothers me so much. That is a big pet peeve of mine, is these fighters that just try and cheat around their diets as much as they can. I mean, come on, dude. I mean, I don't touch junk food when I'm just trying to, get in shape to go to the beach with my wife. I mean, if I had a professional fight coming up, you couldn't pay me money to eat Twizzlers. That just really bothers me. So I just feel like this dude is just all about cutting weight. And I feel like it's not even that I don't have anything against him. In fact, I like his interviews. He seems like kind of a cool dude. My issue, it's more just a frustration thing that, like, man, Take better care of yourself, move up a weight class, and develop your skills instead of putting all your focus on weight cutting. And that's what makes me think that Paul Felder's going to knock him out, because I don't think that James Vick has any times to get better, because he's just always cutting weight, and he's making the weight cutting even harder because of his insistence on being a self-proclaimed sugarhead as a professional athlete, which is ridiculous to me and really bothers me. I already get annoyed enough about normal people that consume large amounts of sugar, but when you're talking about a professional athlete, I just don't think there's any excuse for it. And I think that it definitely, sure, it impacts his weight cuts. It has to. There's no way that eating junk food doesn't make a weight cut harder. I mean, you telling me if you replace Twizzlers with raw almonds, that wouldn't help your weight cut? I don't believe it. And obviously, he's not eating Twizzlers while he's cutting weight, and I've spent way too much time talking about the Twizzlers to begin with. But I remember being so surprised when I was listening to his nutritionist talk about how it's a constant game, which just really makes me think of like a kid, like having to bribe somebody with candy. Like, nah, man, you should, no, that just doesn't make sense to me. So I want to pick Paul Felder. And Paul Felder has looked good as of late, but you also got to remember that Paul Felder is not, he's not this I think part of the problem is Paul Felder is a very good commentator. And the other fighters that are very good commentators are Dominic Cruz and Daniel Cormier, who are both all-time greats at their respective weight classes. So I kind of feel like in my brain, I'm putting Paul Felder on a little bit more of a pedestal than he necessarily is based on his performances in fighting. I still think he's a much better fighter than James Vick, but I don't know if he necessarily is just going to be able to get in there and knock James Vick out. Paul Felder does like to get takedowns and work from top position. James Vick is way too dangerous with his guillotines and front chokes. He's way too dangerous to shoot takedowns on and look for that type of game, although Paul Felder did it to Charles Oliveira. I do think James Vick has a very, very weak chin, mostly due to cutting large amounts of weight, and possibly also due to eating Twizzlers. Okay, I promise that's the last time I'm going to mention Twizzlers. Okay, I'm going to take Paul Felder here. I'm not entirely convinced that he can stop James Vick, but if he is going to stop James Vick, it's going to be in the first round, because that'll be before James Vick has the chance to get warmed up. Once James Vick gets loose and starts keeping the range a little bit, then at that point it becomes a lot harder to stop him. Justin Gaethje really had the right idea going right after him, pressuring him into the fence. I think Paul Felder will look to do the same thing and get the KO in round one. Let's look at the odds, and to be honest, I have no idea what these odds are going to be. I'm really interested to see them. Oh, man. So Paul Felder is a favorite, but only slightly. Minus 127 would be the best odds for him. And James Vick is an underdog, only as high as plus 113 goes though. So basically close to a pick'em fight. I would make the odds a little bit more in favor of Felder if I was making them. But you got to get action from both sides. All right, we got one more fight to talk about here. One more fight. It's a big one, literally and figuratively. Big boys. Big stakes, big fight. Francis Ngannou is taking on the returning Cain Velasquez. I hate to be cynical, but we still have 7 days that Cain Velasquez has to avoid getting injured, so I'm super nervous that this fight won't happen. If this fight doesn't happen, please make Paul Felder versus James Vick 5 rounds and put it in the main event. Don't do what you did to me last night, UFC. I'm still recovering from the disappointment of checking my phone and I saw Brett Okamoto saying, Israel Adesanya hinted he would be in the octagon for the main event. Now he definitely will be. And I was like, wait a second. That sounds like Israel Adesanya is the main event now. And then I clicked on it, and sure enough, the rest of the information was that Robert Whittaker was having surgery for a hernia. So yeah, so don't do that to me. Don't do that to me, Cain. Stay healthy. Wrap Cain. So the best way to get Cain to a fight without getting injured is to wrap him entirely in bubble wrap. And then just put him on like a hand truck and just push him around while he's all wrapped in bubble wrap. And don't let him do anything. He doesn't have to cut weight. Literally, don't even let him out of that bubble wrap. When he needs some water or some food, cut a hole in the bubble wrap around his face and give him the food and water through said hole in said bubble wrap. Do not let this guy get injured. He has gotten injured and had to pull out of fights days before on several occasions, and I'm really nervous that that could happen. So please, I'm knocking on wood, please don't do that, Cain. Okay. These guys have pretty similar records. Francis is 12-3. Cain is 14-2. Francis came in much lighter for his last fight, so now they're also closer in size. Cain, I think Cain's only, I say only, he's a lot tall. He's taller than me. I'm 5'9", but Cain's only 6'1", so not a super tall heavyweight. And he usually fights around 240 pounds, so he's 25 under the limit. So the interesting thing here is that Ngannou originally was like cutting to 265 and then decided recently to start coming in more around 250. He is 6'4", however, so that is a pretty decent advantage as far as the size goes. I would be curious to see how the reach compares, so we're going to check that out. And just as we're getting into this, it's pretty obvious that the general consensus would be, Francis Ngannou only has a 76-inch reach, but Cain's is only 73. No, that's their height. Reach. Francis Ngannou has an 83-inch reach. Cain has a 77. So big reach advantage there. If I were Ngannou, I would, I don't know what I would do. Cain's terrifying. So basically, this is almost impossible fight to make a pick on, because Francis Ngannou, in his last fight, he knocked out Curtis Blaydes before Curtis Blaydes got the chance to do anything. So we don't know if he's improved on his wrestling at all or his conditioning. And Cain Velasquez, we haven't seen him in forever. So for all we know, he isn't even half as good as he used to be. So I don't know what to think. I want to pick Cain to just dominate, just get a hold of him, ragdoll him around. But my concern is that Cain's been out way too long, and he has to survive the storm that is Francis Ngannou in order to even get close enough to grapple him. I think Ngannou's going to knock him out. I'll be disappointed because I want to see Cain fight Stipe. I want to see Cain get his belt back. Obviously, he won't fight his teammate Daniel Cormier, but Daniel Cormier will retire before Cain will be back in there. Cain takes at least 6 months to 12 months off between each fight. Daniel Cormier will be gone by the end of 2019, retired and full-time commentator and ESPN analyst. I think Ngannou's going to stop him, though. I think you can't take this much time off. You can't be this inconsistent. Cain Velasquez has not fought since UFC 200. Which was in, I believe, the summer of 2016. Think about that. If I'm right, which I think I am there, oh man, that is a long, long, long time to not be in the cage. And you're telling me that's not going to impact your performance, your timing, your range, your ability to get going? Let's see. Yeah, July 9th of 2016 was his last fight. And before that, it was a year and a month before that. And then it was 2 years before that. There's these huge layoffs here. I don't think Ngannou is so dangerous, and we saw what he did to Blaydes. And he hits those shots in the equilibrium area where it doesn't matter if you have a good chin because he's knocking you off balance. Think about the Andre Arlovski. So he knocked out Overeem with a shot to the chin. Now, Overeem is also pretty chinny, but think about his other ones. Curtis Blaydes, he clipped him right behind the ear on the side of the head and got his equilibrium all out of whack. Andre Arlovski, he did the same thing. Cain Velasquez is susceptible to that. Whenever we see Cain get hurt, it's always with those equilibrium shots. And that's my concern. So that's why I'm picking Francis Ngannou to knock Cain out in the first round and regain his hype train. I think that he's going to completely pick back up steam. Everyone will be hyped about him again. I think he's going to get it done. And he's a big underdog here. He's an underdog at plus 191 is the highest underdog. Cain Velasquez, best odds you could get him at as a favorite is minus 202. Don't bet on heavyweight fights. And especially don't bet against Francis Ngannou. That man has so much power in his hands, it's terrifying. So here's my hopes for this. This is the first official full fight card on ESPN. regular ESPN, not ESPN Plus. My hope is that this fight is entertaining and goes at least long enough into the first round that it seems decisive and not fluky. I hope that the Felder-Vick fight is fun, and I hope Felder gets the chance to really show off his skills to help fans get more familiar with him, because I'm a big fan of his. I hope Calvillo versus Casey is a good scrappy fight. I think it will be. I hope that I'm wrong about Luque stopping Barberena, because I want to see them go to war. I just want to see them have a war. And I also hope that the Chrome Gracie debut ends up going well and doesn't turn into a bad thing where you have a grappler who can't shoot a takedown to save his life, and he's just getting, just trying to follow someone around the cage and not getting anything done. I am a little worried. And then the first fight, I am a little worried that Jimmy Rivera, Aljamain Sterling fight could be a little bit boring. Jimmy Rivera has a tendency to get in some kind of boring, methodical fights, but we'll see. Don't ever count your chickens before they hatch, or whatever that saying is. So I'm going to get out of here. This should be a fun night of fights. And yeah, I'll talk to y'all next time. Next, I guess Monday, I'll come on to do a recap show, unless I'm still up next Sunday night. So I'll be back to recap these. Until then.